They said I wouldn't make it. They laughed at my dreams. They counted every reason I would fail. But I discovered one truth no one could take away. The only belief that matters is the one you place in yourself. They counted me out long before I even understood what counting meant. They counted my failures, my scars, my silence. They counted my broken moments, my weak days, my tears that fell where no one could see them. They counted the times I fell. They counted the reasons I should quit. But what they never counted was my heart. I was never the loudest in the room. I was never the one people placed their bets on. I was never the safe option. I was the question mark, the risk, the story people assumed would end early. From the outside, it looked like I was losing. From the inside, I was learning how to survive. You see, being counted out doesn't always come with noise. Sometimes it comes with silence, the silence of unanswered messages. The silence of doors that don't open, the silence of being overlooked even when you're standing right there. I remember the looks, not the angry ones, the pity ones, the ones that said, "You won't make it," the ones that smiled politely but had already decided my future for me. And the most painful part, some of those looks came from people I loved. They didn't mean to hurt me. They just didn't believe in me, and sometimes disbelief hurts more than hate. Life has a strange way of introducing pain early. As if to ask, are you strong enough to keep going? And when you don't answer fast enough, it pushes harder. I was pushed into corners I didn't choose, circumstances I didn't invite, battles I wasn't prepared for. And yet I woke up every day with the same breath in my chest. That alone was proof I wasn't done. People see success and think it begins with confidence, but for many of us it begins with doubt, crippling doubt. The kind that sits beside you at night and whispers every fear you've ever had. What if they're right? What if this is all you'll ever be? What if you try and still fail? Those questions haunted me. But they also shaped me, because one day I realized something powerful. Every person who doubted me was watching from the outside, but I was the one living inside this life. They saw my wounds. I felt my strength growing around them. They saw my pauses. I felt my patience deepening. They saw delay. I felt preparation. Pain has a strange purpose. It strips you of illusion. It takes away who you pretend to be and introduces you to who you really are. And I met myself in pain, not the polished version, not the confident version, but the raw, trembling, honest version. The version that cried in private and smiled in public. The version that wanted to quit but didn't know how to stop breathing. The version that learned endurance before it learned victory. That's when I stopped asking people for permission to believe in myself. I stopped waiting for validation. I stopped explaining my dreams to people who had already decided they were impossible. Because here's the truth no one tells you. When you are becoming something greater, loneliness is part of the process. Growth is quiet. Transformation is lonely, and belief often begins when no one is clapping. I learned to clap for myself in empty rooms. I learned to whisper encouragement when my voice was shaking. I learned to take one step even when the whole staircase was hidden. Some days, survival was the only success I could manage. And that was enough. I stopped measuring my life by other people's timelines. I stopped comparing my chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 10. I stopped rushing healing just to make others comfortable. Because healing isn't pretty and growth doesn't ask for approval. They counted me out because they saw where I started, but they didn't see what I was becoming. They didn't see the nights I stayed awake, wrestling with fear and faith. They didn't see the mornings I got up even when hope felt heavy. They didn't see the inner conversations where I had to choose myself again and again. Every time life knocked me down, I learned something new about standing up. Not fast, not gracefully, but honestly, I learned that strength doesn't roar. Sometimes it whispers, "Try again tomorrow." I learned that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to move forward while fear walks beside you. And slowly something shifted. I stopped counting my losses. I started counting my lessons. I stopped asking, why me? I started asking, what is this teaching me? And in that shift I found power. Because when you count on yourself, you stop waiting to be rescued. You stop hoping someone will save you. You stop believing your worth depends on external applause. You realize you are both the battlefield and the warrior. The wound and the healing, the question and the answer. They counted me out, but I counted on myself. I counted the times I survived what should have broken me. I counted the moments I chose hope over despair. I counted every small victory no one noticed, and those small victories built something unshakable. This journey didn't make me better than anyone else. It made me truer to myself. I stopped pretending I was unbreakable. I accepted that I was human, and in that acceptance I found resilience. Because broken things, when repaired with honesty, often become stronger than they were before. If you're listening to this and feeling overlooked, if you feel unseen, underestimated, unheard, if life has labeled you a failure before you've even begun, let me tell you something with absolute certainty. Being counted out is not a sentence, it's an invitation. An invitation to rise quietly, to build deeply, to believe fiercely. You don't need the world to believe in you first. You just need to believe enough to take the next step, because one day they will look at you and wonder how you made it. They will call it luck, they will call it talent, they will call it overnight success, but you will know the truth. You counted on yourself on days no one else did, and that is how legends begin. There was a moment when I realized that the people who doubted me were not my enemies. They were mirrors. They reflected what they themselves feared becoming. They reflected limitations they had accepted as truth, and because they couldn't imagine rising beyond their circumstances, they assumed I couldn't either. That realization didn't make me angry. It made me free, free from the need to convince, free from the need to prove, free from the burden of expectation. Because once you understand that disbelief is often inherited pain, you stop taking it personally. I had spent so long trying to earn belief from the outside that I almost forgot to build it on the inside. An inner belief is not loud. It doesn't announce itself. It grows quietly, like roots underground, strengthening before anything visible appears. There were days when my strength was nothing more than showing up. Days when progress looked like survival. Days when victory meant simply not giving up. And even then, I questioned myself. I asked hard questions in the dark. Questions no one prepares you for. What if I never become who I dream of being? What if all this effort still leads to failure? What if I'm hoping for something that was never meant for me? Those questions didn't weaken me. They refined me. They forced me to define success on my own terms. I stopped seeing success as applause. I stopped seeing success as recognition. I stopped seeing success as being chosen. Success became choosing myself. Choosing to try again when quitting felt easier. Choosing to forgive when bitterness felt justified. Choosing patience when urgency screamed. Choosing faith when evidence was absent. Faith is not believing everything will be easy. Faith is believing that whatever comes you will survive it, and survival taught me lessons comfort never could. I learned how to sit with pain without letting it define me. I learned how to hold hope without guarantees. I learned how to walk forward even when clarity refused to come. There is a loneliness that comes when you stop shrinking to fit expectations, when you stop apologizing for your dreams, when you stop dimming your light to keep others comfortable. That loneliness is not punishment, it is preparation, because before life elevates you, it isolates you. Before it strengthens you, it stretches you. Before it reveals you to the world, it reveals you to yourself. I was stretched thin, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, but I was not empty. Every tear watered resilience. Every setback sharpened perspective. Every delay deepened discipline. I stopped asking life for fairness. I started asking for growth, and growth demanded responsibility. Responsibility for my choices. Responsibility for my healing, responsibility for my future. I realized that no one was coming to save me. And instead of feeling abandoned, I felt empowered, because if no one was coming, then everything depended on me, my effort, my mindset, my commitment, and that responsibility became my strength. I stopped waiting for the perfect moment. I stopped waiting for confidence to arrive. I stopped waiting for fear to disappear. I moved while afraid. I acted while uncertain. I believed while trembling, because courage is not confidence. Courage is movement despite doubt. And slowly, almost invisibly, things began to shift, not overnight, not dramatically, but consistently. I noticed I was standing taller, speaking firmer, choosing better. I noticed my boundaries strengthening, my standards rising, my tolerance for negativity shrinking. I no longer needed everyone to understand my journey. I only needed to stay loyal to it. They still doubted, they still questioned, they still watched from a distance. But their opinions no longer lived rent-free in my mind. Because when you count on yourself, external voices lose their power. You stop asking, do they believe in me? And start asking, am I being true to myself? And that question changes everything. I became less interested in impressing and more committed to improving, less focused on being seen and more focused on becoming. I learned that consistency outperforms talent, that patience outlasts pressure. That purpose survives criticism. They counted me out based on statistics, circumstances, and appearances. I counted on myself based on resilience, effort, and faith. And faith doesn't need proof to begin. It becomes proof through persistence. If you are listening right now and feeling tired of carrying expectations that aren't yours, if you feel exhausted from proving your worth, if you feel invisible in rooms where you give your best, let me remind you of something powerful. You don't need permission to rise. You don't need consensus to grow. You don't need validation to matter. The moment you decide to count on yourself, everything changes. Not because life suddenly becomes easier, but because you become stronger, and strength doesn't announce itself. It shows up again and again and again. There came a point when I stopped asking life why it was so hard and started asking myself who I was becoming because of it. That question changed the way I carried my pain. Instead of seeing it as a burden, I began to see it as a sculptor. Every struggle was shaping something inside me that comfort never could. I realized that being counted out teaches you how to count differently. You stop counting followers and start counting discipline. You stop counting applause and start counting effort. You stop counting how many times you fall and start counting how many times you stand back up when no one is watching. There were moments when I wanted to disappear, moments when the weight of expectations felt heavier than the dream itself, moments when rest felt like quitting and quitting felt tempting. In those moments, I learned the difference between rest and surrender. Rest restores you, surrender erases you, and I refused to be erased, so I rested when I needed to. I paused when my soul demanded it, but I never abandoned myself. People often misunderstand strength. They think it's loud, aggressive, unbreakable, but the strongest people I know are gentle with their pain and firm with their purpose. They cry, but they don't collapse. They feel deeply, but they move forward anyway. I began to respect my own pace. I stopped rushing healing just to look strong. I stopped pretending I was okay when I wasn't, because honesty with yourself is the first step toward real power. There is something incredibly brave about admitting you're struggling and still choosing to continue. About acknowledging fear and not letting it make decisions for you. About carrying wounds and not letting them turn into excuses. I had every reason to quit. I had evidence to support doubt. I had history that suggested limitation. But I also had something stronger than all of that. I had a quiet voice inside me that refused to agree with defeat. That voice didn't shout, it whispered. It said, keep going. It said, this pain is not permanent. It said, you are stronger than this moment, and I listened. Listening to yourself is an act of rebellion in a world that constantly tells you who you should be. It requires trust, it requires courage. It requires patience, but once you start, you realize how powerful self-trust truly is. I stopped trying to fit into spaces that required me to shrink. I stopped explaining my worth to people committed to misunderstanding me. I stopped negotiating with doubt, because the truth is, when you are becoming something different, something higher, something truer, not everyone will come with you. Some will stay behind, some will criticize. Some will doubt louder as you grow quieter, and that's okay. Growth is not a group project. I learned to walk alone without feeling lonely. I learned to sit in silence without feeling empty. I learned to move forward without constant reassurance. And slowly, I started to see results, not just external results, but internal ones. I reacted less and responded more. I complained less and worked more. I feared less and trusted more. My definition of success matured. It was no longer about proving them wrong. It was about honoring how far I had come, because proving people wrong is exhausting, but proving yourself right is fulfilling. They counted me out based on a version of me that no longer existed. They judged me using old chapters, old wounds, old limitations. But I was writing something new every single day, and here's the part they never saw. They never saw the nights I had to rebuild myself from doubt. They never saw the mornings I chose discipline over comfort. They never saw the moments I stood alone and decided not to quit, but I saw them. I saw every small win, every private victory, every quiet breakthrough. And those moments mattered more than public praise ever could, because when you count on yourself, you become your own witness. You don't need a crowd to validate your journey. You know what it cost. You know what it took. You know what you survived. If you feel like you're walking alone right now, let this remind you of something important. Some paths are meant to be walked alone because they lead to places only you are meant to reach. You are not late, you are not behind, you are not failing. You are becoming, and becoming takes time. There was a season when nothing seemed to move no matter how hard I tried. Effort without reward, prayer without answers, work without recognition. And that season tested me in ways success never could, because it forced me to confront a question most people avoid. Who are you when nothing is working? Not when people are cheering. Not when results are visible, but when the room is quiet and progress is invisible. That's where I met my true self. I learned that frustration doesn't mean failure. Sometimes it means formation. Sometimes life slows you down not to stop you, but to strengthen what's carrying you forward. I learned that delay is not denial, it's often protection. If I had received everything I wanted when I wanted it, I wouldn't have been ready to hold it, so I stayed, I endured, I trusted what I couldn't yet see. There were days when faith felt heavier than doubt, days when believing required more energy than giving up. But I understood something crucial in those moments. Faith is not feeling strong. Faith is choosing to stand when you feel weak. And weakness taught me humility. It taught me to ask for help when I needed it. It taught me to listen instead of rushing. It taught me compassion for myself and others. I stopped being ashamed of my struggle. I stopped hiding my scars, because scars don't disqualify you. They testify that you survived. I realized that everyone you admire has walked through invisible battles. The difference is not that they didn't struggle. The difference is that they didn't stop. They didn't stop believing when doubt knocked. They didn't stop moving when fear screamed. They didn't stop trying when comfort tempted. They counted on themselves in moments no one applauded. I began to understand that discipline is an act of self-respect. Showing up for yourself every day, even when motivation disappears, is how trust is built within. And once you trust yourself, you become unstoppable. Because when life shakes you, you don't collapse, you adjust. I adjusted my expectations. I adjusted my mindset. I adjusted my circle. I became careful with who I allowed close to my dreams. Not everyone deserves access to your vision. Some people will only see it through the lens of their own fear, so I protected my dreams, I nurtured them quietly, I worked when no one was watching, and slowly, the same people who once doubted began to ask questions. Not because I explained myself better, but because my consistency spoke louder than words. But by then, their opinions mattered less, because I wasn't building my life to impress them anymore. I was building it to honor myself. I learned that peace is a form of success, that waking up without resentment is a victory, that knowing who you are is more valuable than being known by many, and I stopped chasing approval. I started chasing alignment. Alignment between my actions and my values, alignment between my words and my truth, alignment between who I am and who I am becoming. That alignment gave me strength on days motivation failed. They counted me out when I didn't fit their expectations. When my path didn't look traditional, when my pace didn't match theirs. But I counted on myself because I knew my story was not meant to be ordinary. Not because I am special, but because I refused to give up on myself. And you don't need to be extraordinary to do that. You just need to be committed, committed to growth, committed to healing, committed to showing up again and again. If you are tired right now, let me say this clearly. You are allowed to rest, you are allowed to pause, but do not confuse rest with quitting. Quitting erases progress, rest preserves it. Be gentle with yourself without lowering your standards. Because the same hands that hold your wounds can also build your future. At some point, I stopped trying to make people understand me. I realized that understanding is not a requirement for respect, and respect is not a requirement for progress. I didn't need everyone to see my vision. I only needed to stay faithful to it. There is a strange strength that comes when you accept that some people will never clap for you. They will never acknowledge your growth. They will never apologize for doubting you, and once you make peace with that, you stop performing for approval and start living with intention. I learned to separate noise from truth, opinions from purpose, criticism from direction. Not every voice deserves a seat at your table. Not every comment deserves a response. Some people speak from their wounds, not from wisdom, so I chose silence over explanation. Work over argument, consistency over defense, and in that quiet, something beautiful happened. I began to hear myself more clearly. My intuition sharpened, my priorities aligned, my confidence stopped depending on reactions. Confidence is not arrogance, it is calm certainty. It's knowing who you are without announcing it. It's trusting your process without rushing it. It's moving forward without needing permission. I stopped comparing my beginning to someone else's middle. I stopped measuring my worth against timelines that were never designed for me, because comparison steals joy and distracts purpose. My path was mine for a reason. Every delay, every detour, every disappointment carried a lesson I needed. Not wanted, but needed. Lessons in patience, lessons in endurance, lessons in faith. Faith became less about asking for outcomes and more about trusting character. Trusting that even if I didn't understand what was happening, I was not being abandoned. Trusting that struggle was not a sign of failure, but a sign of preparation. I learned to thank life for the hard days, not because they were pleasant, but because they revealed my strength. They showed me what I could survive. They reminded me that I was still standing. There were moments when I looked back at who I used to be and barely recognized that person. Not because I became better than them, but because I became braver. I stopped tolerating what drained me. I stopped chasing what didn't align. I stopped betraying myself to belong. Belonging to yourself is the greatest form of freedom. They counted me out when I chose a different path. When I didn't follow the script. When I refused to settle for a life that looked good on the outside but felt empty on the inside. I counted on myself because I understood something deeply. No one else has to live with my choices. No one else has to carry my regrets. No one else has to wake up in my body and face my reality. So I chose responsibility over excuses, growth over comfort, truth over approval, and responsibility changed everything. It made me stop blaming circumstances and start shaping outcomes. It made me stop waiting for opportunity and start creating it. It made me realize that even when you can't control what happens to you, you can control how you respond. That realization is power. Power is not dominance, it's ownership. Ownership of your reactions, ownership of your habits, ownership of your future. I didn't become fearless. I became disciplined. I didn't eliminate doubt. I learned to act despite it. I didn't escape pain. I learned to transform it, and transformation is not instant. It's a daily choice, 1,000 small decisions made when no one is watching. To get up, to try again, to speak kindly to yourself, to keep going. If you feel unseen right now, remember this. Roots grow in darkness. Seeds break before they bloom, and just because no one sees your progress doesn't mean it isn't happening. You are not invisible, you are incubating, and one day when your growth becomes visible, people will call it sudden. They will say you came out of nowhere. They will ask how you did it, but you will know. You did it by counting on yourself when no one else did. There will be a moment when you look back and realize the person who almost quit is no longer who you are. Not because life became easy, but because you became honest. Honest about your limits, honest about your desires, honest about your worth. I reached that moment quietly, no announcement, no celebration, just a deep breath and the understanding that I had crossed an invisible line. The line between hoping for change and becoming it. I understood then that resilience is built in repetition, in waking up again after disappointment, in choosing effort again after rejection, in believing again after silence. Over and over, until belief stops feeling fragile and starts feeling natural. I stopped asking the world to be gentle with me. I became gentle with myself, and that gentleness gave me endurance. It gave me space to grow without pressure, to heal without shame, to evolve without apology. I learned that strength without compassion becomes hardness, and hardness breaks, but strength with compassion bends and survives. So I treated myself the way I would treat someone I love. With patience, with honesty, with forgiveness. Forgiveness was not about forgetting what hurt me. It was about releasing its control. I forgave the people who doubted me, not because they were right, but because carrying resentment was too heavy for the journey ahead. I forgave myself most of all, for the times I stayed too long, for the times I shrank, for the times I didn't speak up. Forgiveness didn't erase the past, but it freed my future, and freedom changed the way I walked through life. I no longer rushed to prove anything. I moved with purpose, not pressure. I understood that becoming is not a race. It's a relationship with time, effort, and trust. Trust that every step counts. Trust that every setback teaches. Trust that every ending clears space for a beginning. They counted me out because they saw uncertainty. I counted on myself because I felt possibility, and possibility is powerful when you nurture it daily. I nurtured it through discipline when motivation faded, through prayer when answers delayed, through courage when fear grew loud. I learned to celebrate progress, not perfection, to honor effort, not outcome, to value consistency over intensity, and that mindset changed everything. I became less afraid of failure because I understood it wasn't final. Failure was feedback. It showed me where to adjust, not where to stop. I became less afraid of judgment because I realized most people are too busy fighting their own battles to fully understand yours. I became less afraid of the future because I had already survived the past. Survival builds confidence, growth builds clarity, self-trust builds peace, and peace became my greatest achievement, not the absence of struggle, but the presence of steadiness within it, the ability to stand in uncertainty without collapsing, the ability to keep moving without losing myself. If you are listening to this and wondering whether you are strong enough, let me answer you clearly. You are, not because you have never fallen, but because you are still here. Still trying, still hoping, still breathing. Strength is not about never being counted out. It's about what you do after you are, and if the world has already decided your limits, that means you are free. Free to surprise, free to rise, free to redefine what is possible. Count on yourself when applause is absent. Count on yourself when results are slow. Count on yourself when doubt feels louder than faith. Because the relationship you build with yourself will outlast every opinion. One day, they may acknowledge your journey. They may praise your resilience. They may call you an inspiration, but that will not be the victory. The victory will be knowing that when everything tried to convince you to stop believing in yourself, you didn't listen. They counted you out, but you counted on yourself, and that made all the difference. And even after all of that, the journey did not end. Because becoming someone who counts on themselves is not a destination, it is a way of living. Every new level asks a new question. Every new dream demands a deeper version of courage, and every new chapter requires you to trust yourself again from the beginning. I learned that confidence doesn't mean you stop feeling afraid. It means fear no longer gets the final word. Doubt may knock, but it doesn't move in. Failure may visit, but it doesn't stay. Pain may return, but it doesn't rule. There were still days when the old voices tried to come back, the voices that reminded me of where I started, the voices that whispered old limitations, the voices that said, "Don't forget who you used to be." And I didn't forget. I honored that version of me, the one who survived without clarity, the one who believed without evidence, the one who kept going without applause. That version laid the foundation for everything I am now. You don't erase your past when you grow. You stand on it. I stopped being ashamed of my beginnings. I stopped hiding the chapters that looked messy, because the mess taught me mastery. The chaos taught me control. The pain taught me purpose. Purpose is not something you find outside yourself. It is something revealed through what you endure and refuse to surrender to, and I refuse to surrender my voice, my worth. My right to become more. They counted me out in rooms where decisions were made, in conversations where I wasn't invited, in judgments formed without knowing my heart, but I counted on myself in silence. In solitude, in the quiet hours where character is built and integrity is tested, I chose integrity when shortcuts tempted. I chose patience when pressure demanded speed. I chose growth when comfort begged me to stay small. And those choices compounded. Life began to respond differently, not because I demanded more, but because I became more aware, more grounded, more intentional. I understood that success without self-respect is failure in disguise. And I refused to win at the cost of my soul, so I moved forward slowly when needed. I said no when it protected my peace. I let go when holding on drained me. Letting go was not weakness, it was wisdom. I let go of people who only knew the old me. I let go of expectations that didn't align with my truth. I let go of the need to be understood by everyone. And in that release, I felt lighter, stronger, clearer. If you are at a place where you feel misunderstood, misjudged, or underestimated, understand this. That place is not punishment. It is positioning. Positioning you to depend on your inner strength instead of external approval. Positioning you to build faith instead of fear. Positioning you to rise in a way that cannot be taken from you. Because what you build inside cannot be destroyed by opinions. They may never apologize for counting you out. They may never admit they were wrong. They may never acknowledge your resilience, but you don't need that. You need to keep going. Keep going when progress feels slow. Keep going when motivation fades. Keep going when results are invisible, because the strongest transformations happen quietly. And one day, when you stand firmly in who you have become, you will realize that being counted out was not a curse. It was a catalyst. It pushed you inward. It forced you to discover strength you didn't know you had. They counted you out, but you counted on yourself, and that decision rewrote your story, not into a perfect life, but into an honest one, a resilient one, a powerful one, and that is more than enough. And even after all of that, the journey did not end, because becoming someone who counts on themselves is not a destination, it is a way of living. Every new level asks a new question. Every new dream demands a deeper version of courage, and every new chapter requires you to trust yourself again, from the beginning. I learned that confidence doesn't mean you stop feeling afraid. It means fear no longer gets the final word. Doubt may knock, but it doesn't move in. Failure may visit, but it doesn't stay. Pain may return, but it doesn't rule. There were still days when the old voices tried to come back. The voices that reminded me of where I started, the voices that whispered old limitations, the voices that said, "Don't forget who you used to be," and I didn't forget. I honored that version of me, the one who survived without clarity, the one who believed without evidence, the one who kept going without applause. That version laid the foundation for everything I am now. You don't erase your past when you grow, you stand on it. I stopped being ashamed of my beginnings. I stopped hiding the chapters that looked messy, because the mess taught me mastery, the chaos taught me control, the pain taught me purpose. Purpose is not something you find outside yourself. It is something revealed through what you endure and refuse to surrender to. And I refused to surrender my voice, my worth, my right to become more. They counted me out in rooms where decisions were made, in conversations where I wasn't invited, in judgments formed without knowing my heart. But I counted on myself in silence, in solitude, in the quiet hours where character is built and integrity is tested. I chose integrity when shortcuts tempted. I chose patience when pressure demanded speed. I chose growth when comfort begged me to stay small, and those choices compounded. Life began to respond differently, not because I demanded more, but because I became more aware, more grounded, more intentional. I understood that success without self-respect is failure in disguise, and I refused to win at the cost of my soul. So I moved forward slowly when needed. I said no when it protected my peace. I let go when holding on drained me. Letting go was not weakness, it was wisdom. I let go of people who only knew the old me. I let go of expectations that didn't align with my truth. I let go of the need to be understood by everyone, and in that release I felt lighter. Stronger, clearer. If you are at a place where you feel misunderstood, misjudged, or underestimated, understand this. That place is not punishment, it is positioning you to depend on your inner strength instead of external approval, positioning you to build faith instead of fear, positioning you to rise in a way that cannot be taken from you, because what you build inside cannot be destroyed by opinions. They may never apologize for counting you out. They may never admit they were wrong. They may never acknowledge your resilience, but you don't need that. You need to keep going. Keep going when progress feels slow. Keep going when motivation fades. Keep going when results are invisible, because the strongest transformations happen quietly. And one day, when you stand firmly in who you have become, you will realize that being counted out was not a curse. It was a catalyst. It pushed you inward. It forced you to discover strength you didn't know you had. They counted you out, but you counted on yourself, and that decision rewrote your story, not into a perfect life, but into an honest one, a resilient one, a powerful one, and that is more than enough. And when I finally understood that, something inside me settled, not because life became predictable, but because I became grounded. Grounded in the truth that no matter what changed around me, I could rely on the person I had become. I stopped fearing uncertainty. Uncertainty no longer felt like a threat. It felt like space to grow. Space to choose differently, space to become more than what my past suggested. I realized that the hardest moments of my life were not meant to destroy me. They were meant to introduce me to myself, to show me that I could bend without breaking, that I could lose without disappearing, that I could be doubted without being defined by doubt. There is a quiet pride that comes from knowing you didn't quit, not the kind that needs to be displayed, but the kind that sits peacefully in your chest. The kind that whispers you survived even when you didn't know how you would. I carry that pride with humility because I know how close I came to giving up. I know how many times I questioned my worth. I know how heavy the nights were when hope felt far away, and that's why I speak now, not as someone who never struggled, but as someone who kept going. If you are standing at the edge of exhaustion, feeling like you have nothing left to give, let me remind you of something important. You don't have to have everything figured out. You don't have to feel strong. You don't have to see the whole path. You just have to take the next step. The next step is enough. The next breath is enough. The next choice to not give up is enough. Strength is built in moments like this, quiet moments, honest moments, moments where no one is watching and you decide to keep believing anyway. One day, your story will inspire someone else. Not because it was perfect, but because it was real. Because it showed what is possible when a person refuses to give up on themselves. They will see your growth and think it was sudden. They will admire your confidence and think it was natural. They will respect your strength and think it was easy. They won't see the nights you cried silently. They won't feel the fear you carried daily. They won't know how many times you almost stopped, but you will know. And that will be enough. Because at the end of it all, success is not about proving others wrong. It's about proving to yourself that you were always capable, that the belief you placed in yourself was not misplaced, that the decision to keep going was worth it. They counted you out based on what they could see. You counted on yourself based on what you could feel, and that choice changed everything. So walk forward with your head held high. Not in arrogance, but in quiet confidence, the confidence of someone who knows what they have survived, the confidence of someone who trusts their resilience, the confidence of someone who understands that no matter what comes next, they will find a way. Because you already have, they counted you out, but you counted on yourself, and that will always be your greatest victory. Even now, as life continues to test me, I carry that lesson with me every single day. I know that challenges will come, doubt will knock again, setbacks will appear unexpectedly, but I also know that none of that can define me unless I allow it to. Counting on yourself is not a one-time decision. It's a daily practice, a choice you make every morning to trust your heart, your mind, and your spirit over the opinions, judgments, and expectations of others. It's choosing yourself when everything in the world seems to be choosing against you. I have learned that the world will always have voices telling you what you cannot do. It will always highlight your flaws, your failures, and your limitations. But when you listen to yourself instead, you discover something incredible, the courage to keep moving, the wisdom to keep learning, the strength to keep building, no matter how slow the progress feels. Every scar I carry tells a story. Every struggle I endured built layers of resilience that no one else could create for me. Every tear I shed taught me empathy, patience, and endurance, and every moment I thought I could not continue became the moment I discovered I could. If you are struggling to believe in yourself right now, hear me clearly. You are stronger than you think. The power you need is already inside you. The voice that will guide you, encourage you, and lift you up is your own. All you need to do is listen and act. They may count you out. They may laugh at your dreams. They may doubt your potential. And yes, they may even try to convince you that giving up is easier than continuing. But you are not them. You are the one who will face yourself every day. You are the one who will live with the choices you make. You are the one who has to continue even when it feels impossible. So stand tall, move forward. Trust your instincts, honor your journey, protect your dreams, work for what you believe in, and never ever let someone else's disbelief determine your destiny. Because one day, when you look back, you will see how far you've come. You will realize that being counted out was not the end. It was the beginning of discovering the person you were always meant to be. The beginning of realizing your own strength. The beginning of a life built on courage, persistence, and unwavering self-belief. They counted you out, but you counted on yourself, and that choice, that simple, powerful, relentless choice, became the foundation of everything. Everything you dream, everything you hope, everything you strive for, it starts there, within you, in the moment you decided to keep going, to trust yourself, to rise no matter what. Never forget this. The world may overlook you. Circumstances may challenge you, people may doubt you, but no one, and nothing, can stop you from becoming who you are meant to be if you count on yourself. You are your own strength. You are your own courage. You are your own victory. They counted you out, but you counted on yourself, and that will always, always be enough.